The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer. St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on the Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.
There may not have been a more surprising outcome in the August 7th primary than State Representative Karla May defeating incumbent Senator Jacob Hummel. Not only did the St. Louis Democrat defeat a well-funded incumbent, but she won in all parts of the 4th Senatorial District. May joins us on another edition of Politically Speaking podcast to break down her landmark victory and lay out her priorities in the Missouri Senate. Let's hit the music.
This is the Politically Speaking podcast, a candid conversation with the Show Me State's biggest political newsmakers.
I'm Jason Rosenbaum.
And I'm Jo Manish.
Elections should be about your accomplishments. What have you done to qualify you for the position, and why are you qualified to run?
I'm going to push back on these regulators.
I'm doing this for the people.
I was encouraged along the way, not just by my family, but by a lot of teachers and professors, and knew when I was in college that I would run for office someday.
We're very excited about the prospect of having some more free market solutions.
Even though after the conversation, I still might not agree.
We want our listeners to get a real sense of what drives these people.
They're actually people with a story to tell. And welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm your host, Jason Rosenbaum, a reporter with St. Louis Public Radio. Joining me in studio today is
colleague Jo Manish
and the future state senator of Jason Rosenbaum. We have as our special guest today
Karla May,
a state representative for the 84th District and the winner of the Democratic primary in the 4th Senatorial District.
Yeah, and this made a lot of news because a lot of people had not expected this. This was one of those primary contests that kind of went under the radar with everything else that was going on.
Which may have been to your benefit, maybe may have been to your detriment.
Yeah. So you defeated State Senator Jake Hummel, a fellow Democrat who's also the number 2 guy in the state AFL-CIO. So this is rather interesting, especially with the whole Prop 8 fight.
We'll talk more about that later, but since we haven't had you on the show before, we want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got involved politically, and any other things that the people of St. Louis and Missouri should know about Karla May.
Well, you know, people, that was an interesting question because during the campaign, a lot of people kept saying, well, who is Karla May?
Yeah.
So I created this flyer that said, who is Karla May? So every time they say, who is Karla May, I would pass them the flyer telling who is Karla May. Karla May is just a regular St. Louis girl. I grew up in North St. Louis. I went to Northwest High School. That's where I graduated from. I left there and went to St. Louis University and got my undergraduate in business administration finance. So that's where I am. I'm lived in St. Louis City all my life. My start in politics was very early. My mom ran for office back in the 70s. She eventually won the aldermanship in the first ward.
Yes.
Perry May.
Yes, Perry May. In fact, I used to deal with your mom.
Yeah. So so I started working on campaigns, you know. Back then, she was an activist as well. So she did a lot of things in the community. So back then, you know, you had the Acorn going on back then.
Yeah.
You had the fight for equality in housing. We had the Homer G. Phillips fight that was going on. You know, all of this was going on when I was growing up, and so my mom was a part of all of that. She was a member of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. So as a member of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, we were running different campaigns all the time. So I was always working on those campaigns. By the time I got in high school, I was 15, 16 years old. I was actually managing street teams in the street, knocking on doors, getting out the vote. They used to have a citywide get out the vote campaign, and I used to get paid, you know, to do areas of the city in the get out the vote campaign.
So what made you decide to get into politics yourself? And I remember I actually covered one of your first state rep races. So go ahead and talk about that.
So I had, you know how when you graduate from college, you're wondering what else is there. So I'm working, and I'm like, it has to be more than life than this.
Now, what were you doing? I mean, working-wise.
So I was at Southwestern Bell.
Okay.
Southwestern Bell became AT&T. Yeah. So
is that where you currently work now?
That's where I currently work now. Been there 18 years. I started September 1 of 1999.
And so what do you do?
I've done a lot of things, but right now I'm in sales.
Okay.
So, but I was working one day and I wanted to give back. It was something in me that wanted to help in the community. It was a lot of things going on, and I felt like I can change things because I knew how. I had always been involved in what we consider the struggles for, rights, human rights. So I'm a praying person. So, I prayed. I was going to church. I was like, Lord, I gotta, I have to do something. So at that point, I decided to run for the state rep seat.
And that was being vacated by Yafet El-Amin, who was running for the state senate.
Exactly.
You ran against her husband, T.D. El-Amin, and Joseph Palm, who I think is still the committee man in the 26th Ward.
He is. He is.
You did not win that race, but T.D. El-Amin had to resign in 2009 because he went to prison.
Let me go back for it.
Yeah.
Because you said I didn't win. Yeah. Actually, I won because, people say, well, how did you win?
Right.
Well, I ran and I got almost 800 votes.
Yes.
So to me, I was excited because almost 800 people voted for me that had never voted for me before.
Right.
So it was a win for me, even though it looked like a loss to everybody else. And from there, all I needed was somebody that was just like me, meaning that I was effective in the streets. I was good at managing in the streets, but I didn't know how to be the candidate.
Right.
You got it. So
Okay.
that was the difference.
Yeah, because I remember that race very well. So then you. I think some of the most successful politicians in that region are people. I'm thinking Deb Lavender, for example, in Kirkwood, who just keep running until they start winning. Yeah. So talk about So then after that one, then what happened?
So Mr. El-Amin had to step down from the seat. And when he stepped down for the seat, then the Democratic Central Committee comes in and do the Democratic nominations. Well, me and Mr. Palm had ran for the seat before, so I called him. I said, are you going to, go for the seat? He said, no, he wasn't. So it was at that point you soliciting committee people for the nomination. And I thought it was just going to be me and him. And then at the nomination, there was somebody else that showed up.
Hope Whitehead.
Yeah, Hope Whitehead. Yes.
So for some reason, the votes got all split up, and I didn't get it. But naturally, I told them I was going to run against them as an independent because I felt like they stole it.
And you almost won. You almost won that race as an independent, which is an impressive feat for a state legislative seat. There are people who win as independents for aldermanic seats, but winning as an independent for the legislature is very difficult. You got about 45% of the vote, and that leads to 2010. Where you faced off against then Representative Whitehead. You beat her, and that started basically this undefeated streak that's happened since then, where redistricting happened. You got put into a different district. You ran against Hope Whitehead and Mike Owens, who is an attorney who happens to be the husband of Mayor Lyda Crewson, won by a pretty solid margin, then won unopposed in 2014 and 2016, but in 2016, you ran for committee woman against Tashara Jones and won that race as well.
So how did you do all that? I mean, because some people would say, how did she? What sort of strategy do you use that you've learned from your initial losses that have made you so successful since then?
So let me go back to something you said. So what gave me the courage to run as an independent was, I don't know if you remember Alderman Kenny Jones.
Yes.
He probably was the only independent in the state of Missouri at that time that ran successful campaign for independent. Well, I used to do the street teams for him. I was the person that was knocking on doors doing his campaign along with the coalition of black trade unionists. And so I had been trained how to work in the street through that effort. He was a mentor of mine. And if you talk about under the president of Lou Moy right now, Jay Ozier, it was a team that has been solid with me for years. So I was birthed out of that. So if you want to look at success and why I'm moving, it's because I learned that strategy. I learned how to be in the streets, but I have to, I always, like to give recognition where recognition is due. I'm a person that believes in faith. And I say, if you want anything, ask God for it. And when you ask Him for it, then you put feet to what you ask, and that's how I believe things happen.
Now, you and I talked about this last spring, but I'd like you to explain this again on the air. What made you decide to run for the state senate, especially against an incumbent Democrat? I mean, not everybody does this, but it's done. I mean, so it's not. So what made you decide that you wanted to challenge Jake Hummel for this seat, and why?
Well, I was unhappy with how they came around to the Democratic nominee situation. So, I have been there before, remember? And so
it's a reoccurring theme.
It's a reoccurring theme. So I felt like I had been a part of labor for over 20 years, and it was 2 labor candidates in that district that was interested in that seat.
Because just for our listeners, you are a member of the Communications Workers of America labor
CWA 6300. That is correct.
Continue.
And which is a huge part, of this win as well. So when you talk about so the Democratic nomination process came about, I thought it was unfair. Let me tell you why I thought it was unfair. First of all, labor did not come to me in reference to the seat, okay? So labor has this way of giving people they want what I call positions, without, which I call unequitable distribution of positions and things like that within the trades, because there's not a balance there.
Yeah.
So they did not come. So I was a candidate where my district was in there, and they were aware that I wanted to run for the 4th senatorial district seat. I had this conversation with Joe Kevaney when he was in office, and I asked him to support me because we would have turned out at the same time. So he stepped down from the position, took a law judgeship, and then he chaired the Democratic Central Committee seat that turned it over to Jake Hummel.
Just for our listeners to understand what Representative May is talking about, Kevaney resigned, and he was also a committee man. So
that is correct.
And he not only was a committee man, he was a committee man in the 28th Ward, which had a lot of votes because of the population. So he played a pretty major role in choosing his successor, essentially.
And I think that was a conflict of interest.
So continue.
So I was angry. First of all, I was angry at labor because I felt like we should have had a conversation. You had 3 labor candidates in that district. We should have all sat down and had a conversation.
Who was the other one, by the way?
Michelle Cracky.
Yes. My former state representative.
So it was myself, Michelle Cracky, and me and Michelle was not even aware that Hummel was in the seat because remember, his district was actually the 5th senatorial district. So when they did redistricting in 2012, he was right on the border. His house was on the border of the 4th.
He lives in the 11th Ward, but very little of the 11th Ward is actually in the 4th. His house is in the 4th, though.
It's right on that line, yes. So we were not aware. So I was disappointed at labor, which I always have family fights with labor. It's the nature of the business. So I was upset with, how that transaction occurred, and I had every intention of challenging it.
Now, you said something before we went on the air I wanted you to repeat, talking about sometimes the preference for the white guys.
So the disparity within labor. So labor is, we have what I call internal, things, issues, but it's not what I want to say, just labor only. You have these issues in workplaces in corporate America as well. But in labor, you have what I call the good old boys clubs. White males dominate the positions in labor. And that's what it is. And so when you're talking about, to be told, well, we didn't know you was running for the seat. Well, you should have had a conversation with me because you knew I was in the district and you knew that the 8 years that I've been in the legislature, I have been the predominant fighter when it came to workers' rights and benefits and things on the floor. So to me, it was an insult. So that fueled, my passion to challenge their decision.
Yeah, because I remember I talked to you last spring after you filed, and you were discussing some of the same point. So then what happened?
So, then after that, we had the legislative session, and I still, stood where I stood because, you can't, the issue when it comes to rights for workers is very predominant. We looking at a society right now where there's an imbalance when it comes to workers' wages and things like that. So you will never be able to separate me from that fight because I believe in equality and I believe in a balanced scales of justice. So even though, I felt like I had an issue with labor, it's still a united fight when it comes to workers' rights.
And I want to just make a point about there have been other African-American elected officials who have taken another route. Courtney Curtis, for example, in St. Louis County, got into a very public fight with labor to the point where he actually had supported right to work. And that kind of was an outgrowth of a major conflict between African-American political leaders in the county and labor unions stemming back to Charlie Dooley. But the point for bringing that up is even though you were upset with labor, your reaction wasn't to vote against them on a bunch of things. It was just to basically fight 10 times harder, essentially.
Right. Exactly. And so what it is, it's either all of us or none of us. Mm-hmm. You get me? And so we're either together or we're not. Mm-hmm. And what I see is I'm not going to vote for something that I know is going to hurt the people. Right to work is wrong for Missouri. And you are not going to cause me to be hateful just because you are. Racism exists in the United States, and I believe racism exists within labor. But it's not even racism. It's more sexism to me than it is racism. So, when you have men-dominant entity. So I'm going to challenge that every time it comes up. And I love these guys enough to say, hey, you got to change. Get over it. We're going to move forward together. And I'm going to force you to move forward together. We're not going to go backwards. This is 2018. We're going to change the way we do business because everybody needs a seat at the table and everybody needs to be included. And that's just the bottom line. And you can accept it or not. But if you cross it, I'm going to fight it. And that's just the way it is.
So for the primary election, are there certain things that you did as far as flyers or door-to-door, or just kind of lay out a little bit of what you did? Because, it was it's a respectable win. You didn't just squeak by.
And we'll talk more about that after your explanation, but continue.
Okay. So basically, I didn't do anything different than what I did in the races that I did before. I always knock on doors. I like talking to people. I love people, irregardless to whatever. People to me, I would say amazing. The things they say to you. I remember I knocked on the door of a senior citizen, and she said, "What is wrong with your hair? I barely recognized you. You need to go do something to your hair." And it was really hot outside, so my hair looks like this. and she say, so you're Karla May? I know you, but I want you to do something with your hair.
Where was this?
It was amazing. It was so funny.
Where was this?
I was actually in 26. Yeah.
Continue.
So it was, so when you're so I love knocking on doors because people keep you honest. People tell you what it is. And I wish people would understand this too. It's hard knocking on doors. I'm one person. It's 114,000 voters out there, about 80-something thousand doors. So it's like I'm not going to get to all of them, but I try to get to at least 5,000.
So did you have a lot of help?
Yeah. Well, this campaign, I did not really have a lot of help. I had help. Don't get me wrong. I had a whole bunch of people volunteering. And that was amazing. They were coming from everywhere. When I say they were not the normal people that helped in the campaign. So it's not my normal campaign team because we didn't have a lot of resources. But it was just people, ordinary people that just was walking off the street into my headquarters volunteering. It was amazing. Oh my God, I was in awe. It made me cry.
I do have to ask this question because there's been some speculation. Did Congressman Clay end up helping you near the end, or did he basically stay out of this race? Because there's some people on the Hummel side who believe that he came in late and helped your campaign. What was his role, if any, in your campaign?
Let me give you. So the congressman, if he supports you, he supports you. But most of these races, he stay out of. So they're incorrect when they say that, in his defense. I have to be in his defense because they say he did this. He did not. He didn't come in late and help me or anything like that. That's not how it ran. I ran my own campaign. Now, I had a piece of literature that, I was asking for the endorsement of the congressman. Now, I'm the person that asks for forgiveness.
Okay.
I don't ask for permission.
Okay.
Okay? So I, put out a piece of literature, but I didn't put it everywhere. I only put it in 3 places.
So what did the literature say?
It just said, Congressman Clay endorses Karla May.
Okay, but you hadn't asked him yet.
Well, let me tell you something.
But here's the thing.
So let me tell you something. Yeah. So all the years that I've been elected, Congressman Clay we've always worked together.
I was just going to say,
yes.
I remember in 2014 during the Josh Peters race where he went door to door with them. I remember you went door to door with Josh Peters.
That's right. So we have always been a team. He's always, helped me and I've helped him. I respect his voting record. So we have always been a team. So this campaign, he had his own challenges,
right?
Doing this race, and I knew he supported me, so I felt comfortable doing what I did, and he wasn't upset about it at all. He supports me, irregardless. But in his defense, he endorsed me, but in his defense, I have to say that,
But I do want
to. Advantage.
Oh, well, I appreciate your candor on that, but let's look at the results here because the results are remarkable.
Yeah.
And I don't use those words very often, but considering you had significantly less money than Jake Hummel, you raised less money and you spent less money, your margins in North St. Louis City, where a lot of your district was or is, were between 85 and 90%. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't just the African-American wards that you did exceptionally well in. You won the 28th ward with 65% of the vote, which is a huge population ward, and it's an integrated ward. You tied in some South St. Louis wards, like I think the 10th ward you almost tied, and the 14th ward you won outright. And then you got like between 35 and 40% Southwest St. Louis City, which may seem to our listeners to be, oh, that's not very good. For an African-American candidate, that's exceptional numbers.
Yeah.
So you were kind of talking with me offline about this, but you really you told me basically you don't really run a race where you see the demographics and you see white and black. You're running to represent everybody. And I think that the results kind of speak for themselves, don't they?
Yes. No. See, I love people. And so people, they always try to put you in the back. If somebody else, I used to get irritated when they say, well, you're black. If you say that to me one more time, every morning I wake up, I know that. So what difference do it make? I told them, and what is that? So I told them, what is that? When you tell me I'm liberal, what is that? I don't even define that.
Or that you're a woman. Yeah.
Or that I'm a woman.
Yeah, people say that to me.
And then they say, well, you're progressive. What does that mean? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So quit categorizing me. I don't like those categorizations. So I went in South St. Louis and knocked on doors. I went knocking on doors. And I think, just me alone, I started at 7 in the morning and I would end at 2:30 in the morning. That was the schedule I set for myself for this whole campaign.
You were knocking on doors at 1 in the morning?
At 7 in the morning to 2:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So what I would say to you is you got to understand that people are out at night.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things going on in St. Louis at night. So, I am you giving me caffeine, I'm trying to wean myself off of caffeine. So I knocked, and then the people in South St. Louis, oh my God, they were phenomenal. It was, I didn't have any mean-spirited or anything. I knocked on the doors. People were nice and welcoming and everything. I didn't have any bad experiences knocking on doors. And they were warm, even all the way down past River Des Peres. I was having a fun time at the top of the hill on the other side of the river, just talking to people. And you'll be amazed we have so many commonalities. It's just weird.
And that's really good to hear. As someone who used to live in Southwest St. Louis City, it's a wonderful community. But living there for 8 years, I did encounter people who were frankly racist.
Yes.
And to hear somebody being able to go in that part of the city and have the time that you said, I think it's just showing that St. Louis is evolving a little bit.
It
Because
is.
not only in your particular race did you get around 35-40%, if you look at the mayor's race in 2017, African-American candidates collectively got about 40% of the vote in some of the Southwest St. Louis wards, which you go back to 2013, Louis Reed getting like 15% there. It is a showcase that voting patterns are changed.
Yeah. So okay, now you've won the nomination, and so in the city, winning the Democratic nomination is pretty much, I mean, given that means you're going to get it. So you mentioned that you're heading to Jeff City later this week. So talk a little bit about what now happens and kind of what your plan is, and then we'll segue into the issues that you plan to emphasize in the Senate.
So basically, I'm getting ready to transition into the Senate, which, everything, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the experience. I've served in the House. I've built excellent relationships in the House with my colleagues. They know me as, I consider the angry representative sometimes when I don't get my way.
Yeah.
I throw a little tantrum. No, I throw a big tantrum, seriously. But, it's all in fun. We leave everything on the floor. But I have a lot of issues. The first year, I really want to focus on being on the ground in the district. I really want to, see how we can cause some economic influence to happen, especially in parts of the north part of the district. I'm a person that when I represent something, I want it to all be on an excellent level. I want to see if we can foster some of those public-private partnerships where we're looking at behavioral health issues, acute behavioral health issues in the city of St. Louis. So I'll be looking at legislation and things like that we can pass that'll help us foster those relationships, trying to bring all of those entities that serve those constituent groups into a streamlined effect. I also want to look at, some of the issues in reference to some of the food deserts that are occurring in different parts of the city.
Yeah.
We also want to look at, how do we, in some areas we're talking about traffic, just different things, the highway, sound walls. It's so many things, but those are some of the key things that I want to look at. I've actually been writing a list.
Okay.
Oh, my.
Okay, let's hear it.
And just keep in mind, most of our listeners know this, but even as a Democrat in a Republican-controlled Senate, Democratic senators have a lot more ability to pass bills and effectuate policies than in the House. Now, as I mentioned offline, you actually have passed standalone bills yourselves and attached amendments on things in the House. But the reason why this list is actually notable is you may be able to actually accomplish a lot of this much easier now as the Senate.
Yes.
So feel free to list some of the things if you found it.
So the fight in the House was much more strenuous because you had to have 82 votes to do anything. And then, there are those lines again. They keep on doing they wanted to, instead of focusing on the issue that you are bringing forth, they want to focus on the party in which you come from, which is the foolishness of government. So, if a Democrat raises an issue that will impact the whole state in a positive way, just because they raised the issue and they weren't a Republican, they'll stay. I'm gonna give you an example: the Transportation Network Bill, Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
I filed that resolution on the national level at the National Black Conference of State Legislators, which went to the White House. It was a resolution to the White House. I filed that resolution. I brought it home and filed it as a bill in the House. The Republicans hijacked it and gave it to a freshman Republican, and I had to end up co-sponsoring the bill.
Now, what exactly, just so our listeners know, what
so
did
the
bill do?
Transportation Network Bill was the biggest job bill that I consider the biggest job bill when you're talking about bringing Uber and Lyft into Missouri. They were fighting it. A lot of the lobbyists were against it. We were able to get it done during the 2016. It might have been in 2016,
2017.
Yeah, 2016, 2017 legislative session. They gave it to Kurt Matthews. Me and him talk about, I always say it's my bill. They let you file my bill. I was offended. But anyway, I got over it. And we did a press conference. I did a press conference with the Republicans in reference to the Transportation Network Bill because it was my bill. And that bill, so when you're dealing with in the House, you have a lot of the lines that divide things. We're not really, to me, it's not really focused on the issues that affect Missourians. It's focused on the stupidity of party politics. And, I'm hoping in the Senate I can get away from that.
I do want to ask about education, because that's such a huge issue in the city of St. Louis and the county. During the next 4 years, there may be a push to wean the St. Louis public schools off the special administrative board and have some sort of hybrid or have it elected. I think that both Senators Hummel and Nasheed have been dealing with that issue now. What's kind of your take on the governance issue of St. Louis schools at this point?
Well, let me tell you this. I'm just going to give you this. I am a firm believer in people elected people. Mm-hmm. So if you don't want to have an elected board, then you need to eliminate what I'm saying is, you get what I'm saying, the process.
Yeah.
So we have people that elected. So in my opinion, no matter what, is that the power needs to be turned over to the elected board because they were elected by the people. See, I get offended. I'll say that word a lot, because that's the easy word for me. When you take power away from the people. The voice of the people. We spoke very loudly during this election that right to work is wrong for Missouri. And people should not tolerate, I don't care what part of the state that you've been elected in, should not tolerate anybody who files a bill to create right to work in the state when the people have already said that they didn't want it.
Right.
So, back to your issue. We have an elected board. I believe that the power should be turned to the elected board. We can transition the power back to the elected board to maintain, whatever governance, we have, to maintain whatever progress we've made. But that's just my opinion because the people elected the people.
Yeah, and just for our listeners, there is an elected St. Louis school board. It just doesn't have any power right now. The special administrative board pretty much runs the school district.
So, the state Senate, like the state House, is dominated by Republicans. So since your election, about a little over a week ago, have you been hearing much from the Republican leadership in the Senate? Do you have any? Are there any particular people in the Senate on the Republican side that you think you particularly know well that you might be able to work with on certain issues?
Well, I know a lot of them well. Some of them served in the House with me, so I'm looking forward to working with them. Even the President Pro Tem, Ron Richardson. I'm looking forward to that, having that conversation. And I've also given my legislative assistant, leeway to set up, meetings and phone conversations with all of the senators that'll be coming back. So I am, I'm excited. I'm a people person. You'll find that out. So, I'm not a person that's going to allow, you to draw a line and say that's the line. I'm going to erase the line and see what we can do. I think that I'm interested in policy that's going to positively impact Missouri. And we can't look at policy based on party because policy affects people differently. And you can't assume that your policy based on your party is the right policy for the whole state of Missouri.
What's your relationship like with Governor Parson? Because I don't know if you served in the House together, but you certainly served in the House when he was in the Senate. And a lot of people, even on the Democratic side, really like him personally and feel like they can work with him on some big issues.
Well, I didn't know him personally, so I didn't really have a lot of I don't remember working with him specifically on certain issues. Like when I needed to get a bill passed or something in the Senate, I don't remember lobbying him for his vote. So, but I've heard he's an outstanding guy. I've spoken with him. I've said hello to him, but we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation. And I'm looking forward to doing that.
Are there things that you're hoping that the St. Louis area Senate delegation, which is predominantly Democratic, might work on, either transportation or something? Looking at it on a regional level, are there certain things that you're hoping to talk to Senator Nasheed or others about whatever?
Okay. So some of the things I want to look at, is the tax structure for small businesses. I want to look at, how that is affecting our small businesses and what economic opportunities are available for them. I used to have when I was in the House, I had a biennial bringing businesses and government meeting together. So I used to bring the government and the small businesses together to figure out, ways to stabilize small businesses in the community. So that's something that I want to continue. I started that. I really want to continue that. I think that, Missouri exports a lot, so we have to find products within small businesses that can go through that process of being exported that'll stabilize them in the community. And also, they can, give longevity to those businesses. So I want to look at that. I also want to look at, I was on transportation, so we definitely got to do something about MoDOT. We have a gas tax increase that's on the November ballot, moving it from 17 cents to 27 cents. I sent out a survey when I was in the House. I got overwhelmingly a positive response. Missouri has more roadways than a lot of states, so we have to take care of almost double what other states have to take care of in roads. So we have to look at a way of funding that. We got to figure out some type of partnership.
So you're in favor of the gas tax increase?
I am in favor of the gas tax increase, but the way they structured it in the House that this passed, I voted no. And the reason for that is because I got to think, they did some Yankee with the bill. So instead of
I believe it was attached to another bill dealing with tax credits or something like that. And I've not studied that bill enough to really comment
and there was
on
a phased in. It was the increase
it's
was
going to phase in,
if I remember.
So that's the increase phase in is okay. But it went to, they actually set it up to go to the Missouri Highway
Patrol.
Because the Missouri Highway Patrol is also funded out of that tax fund.
Yeah.
So instead of saying it's going for this, they said we're going to send it to the Missouri Highway Patrol, which is supposed to free up the money for the roads. But to me, you should have educated the public on that in the beginning. That was a last minute type of thing, and they talking about it polls better. I don't do polls. I do educating constituents. So since we weren't able and didn't have time to educate the constituents on how the tax was going to go, I voted no on the bill.
So I want to go over some ballot initiatives that are going to be up. I know that this is going to be by the voters, but many people in your district may be interested to hear your take on that. Medical marijuana, there are like 3,000 initiatives. There's actually only 3. Generally, what's your thought on legalizing marijuana for medicinal use?
I filed the bill.
Yeah, so you're in favor of that.
I filed the bill to legalize it. Let me tell you why. People say, well, why did you do that? That's just awful. So I don't know, the thing with the expanding marijuana is the initiative petitions, that's okay. I'm not against them, but the thing about it is it wasn't a public process.
Yeah.
You get me? Somebody in the room came up with all of the components of that legislation and they put it on the petition, which I'm not saying that's bad or whatever,
But it's just that most people, when somebody comes up to you outside the store or wherever you are
and ask you
to sign, it's not like you're going to read all 5 or 6 pages.
You're not going to read all 5 or 6 pages. So I would rather, and I tried to get the House of Representatives to do this. I talked to the Speaker. I said, we need to pass it here in the legislature. And the reason that is because it's a public forum and we're going to have a public meeting that gives everybody an opportunity to come and testify for it. And we can write the bill based on our constituency groups that we represent. We know our districts better than the 5 or 6 people that sit in that room that wrote that petition. And you don't know if it's going to be positive or negative things within that petition that's going to affect people. So that's my concern. I'm for, making it legal, but I'm for making sure that say for instance, if I'm in St. Joe and St. Joe don't want a retail shop there, they don't need to have one. You get me?
Yeah.
I need local control to be able to opt in to say if they would like this in their area, if they would not like it in their area.
Yeah.
So you have not given them that opportunity. And in a bill that we could have did in the House, we could have gave the opportunity for local municipalities to opt in or out of it. You cannot force them into it. And the areas of the state that wanted to do it could do it. So that's all I'm saying.
Minimum wage increase, I assume, because you are part of organized labor, and organized labor
Yes.
is all for minimum wage increase. You're probably for raising it to $12 an hour. Is that fair to say?
I'm for raising it to $15 an hour.
So, yeah,
So
there
I'm
you go.
for a fight for 15. But let me tell you why, though. If you look at the history, look at the Department of Labor statistics. They have several graphs. So when you break down the productivity of workers, since 1970, the productivity of workers have skyrocketed. But wages have went on a decline. Wages have declined.
When inflation's taken into account.
When
yes.
inflation is taken into account. That is correct. Cost of living. So therefore, if I can't compete based on my wages, it's a public-private partnership. Businesses can't exist without people, consumers. Consumers have to be able to strive in order for businesses to survive. You got me? So therefore, we have to be able to raise wages for consumers as well. It can't be greed. You can't be making $15-20 billion and expect, not to share the wealth. So people need to be able to have purchasing power. They need to be able to pay their bills. They don't need to, paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth.
Now, Clean Missouri, which involves redistricting, something that I think you're well accustomed to, would basically put most of the authority for redistricting onto like a nonpartisan demographer. Right now, for our listeners, a bipartisan group of people attempt to draw the districts. They usually fail, and judges usually draw the districts in wacky and fun ways. Just look at Gina Mitten's district, for example. What's kind of your thought process about this? Because if Clean Missouri passes, it could mean the 4th district looks significantly different under that system than under the current system, which has to be done by population. Is that something you've given a lot of thought to?
Well, I have to be honest. When they first came up with Clean Missouri, I was kind of,
Weary,
yeah. Because I didn't, I wasn't a part of the conversation in the beginning, meaning that, I know it's going to be a bipartisan entity, but that's just like telling me judges are bipartisan. Judges are impartial. That's just like telling me they're impartial. That's not true, and we all know that. So, but in saying that, I definitely want to take it out of the hands of, politics. You get me? I think that, the way we have fought over it in the past has become a political nightmare, and it just doesn't get done. So if we can have I would love to see a process in place, and I would have loved to see what that process was and have that included in the legislation, and just saying that I'm going to turn it over to this entity, and I don't know who this entity is.
Yeah, and this is the issue that I have with the current system. We have no idea how judges end up making their decisions. So, for example, like when your district was redrawn radically, we have no clue what went into that.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of like assumptions like, oh, well, politician X convinced the judge to draw it this way. But we don't know that. We don't know how that happened. And I think that's a shortcoming in the system. Now, I think that there are a lot of Republicans who are very wary about Clean Missouri because they see it as kind of a Democratic attempt to get a leg up on redistricting. But I guess that's kind of a battle that's going to be fought over the next few months and years.
Well, I'm not opposed to what they're trying to do. So I don't like how it's been done in the past. So let me tell you this. I'm going to be optimistic about Clean Missouri and how it's going to be done in the future. And so if I was saying today, I would say vote yes for Clean Missouri.
Now, are there any other campaigns? I mean, you're going to be helping McCaskill? Are you going to be doing stuff for the state auditor? Will you be doing stuff for other people? Are you going to be focusing, though, mainly on getting acclimated to your new office? Just kind of how do you see things for the next few months?
Well, I have a Republican challenger.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's true. I should not forget that. I apologize.
Right. So I don't take anything for granted. So I'll be running the same vigorous campaign trying to beat what I did in the primary. I'm going to try to beat that in the general. So I'm going to have fun out there in the streets, and hopefully while I'm out there, I can also, help with our statewide candidates, Nicole and Senator Claire McCaskill, yeah.
My last question, and I would be remiss not to ask this. This will be the first time in history that not only 2 women have represented the city of St. Louis, but 2 African-American women have represented the city of St. Louis. Joe has written in the past about how African American women have played a really important role in St. Louis politics, and not just a supporting role, like a dominant leadership role.
Really, when you get past the congressman, I mean, most of the major African American political players in the St. Louis area are African American women.
Isn't that phenomenal?
So I want to.
I
know that you mentioned before that you're representing everybody and you're not looking things through color, but this is a really significant achievement for the city, and I want you to just reflect on it.
So basically, this is, like I said, this is phenomenal. And the thing about it is, I feel like it's 2018 and the paradigm is changing, and I'm hopeful for the future. Because if you look at government, period, government for 200 century, whatever, decades, or however I say it, has been dominated by white men, have dominated government. And even for African Americans, period, we have had a slow progress when it came to representing people in leadership. So what needs to happen is what is happening. White people have to be comfortable with black people representing them, just the way black people are comfortable with white people representing them. It should matter the color of the person that's representing you, as long as that person is representing your interest. And that's key. And so this is a phenomenal change in the region. We need to get more regional. We need to get beyond these lines. I keep on seeing them, in my dream. I keep having these dreams, and I have this eraser, and I'm erasing all of these lines. I've been having it for like almost a year now. So, I don't know if somebody's trying to tell me something, but we need to get, try to erase all the lines and create equality, real equality. What I'm talking about is, if you walk in a room, and you're getting ready to make a decision, and everybody in the room looks like you need to stop and say, we need to diversify this room. We need to bring people to the table so that we can represent the whole demographic. You get me? So government needs to be integrated. And the seat that I'm taking, this seat, was held by the first African-American senator, Gwen Giles. She was the first African-American senator in the state of Missouri. Yes, I had never had the opportunity, but I'm only the second female to hold this seat in 198 years.
Well, congratulations. And also, as I mentioned before in the green room, congratulations to Brian Williams, who is the first African-American man in almost 20 years to serve in the Senate. We're definitely going to have him on the show.
Yes, since Jet Banks.
Yes. That's right.
Actually, I think it might be since Lacey Clay, because Jet Banks resigned in 1999. Lacey Clay, I presume, served in the 4th senatorial district.
He did. He served in the 4th.
So
I have Lacey's seat.
Yeah, so there you go.
There you go.
I have the congressman's seat.
Well, there you go.
So he has to help me make this great.
Absolutely. We'll see what he decides to do. But thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today.
No problem.
For all of our stories, stlpublicradio.org. Follow me on Twitter at Jay Rosenbaum. Follow Joe on Twitter at
Jay Mannies. It's JMANNIES.
And how would people follow you either on social media or any other part of the World Wide Web or otherwise?
Well, I am Karla May on Facebook. I'm Karla May 4 Senate, the number 4 Senate on Facebook. They can follow me there. My Twitter handle is KRMay38 on Twitter. So they can follow me there. I also have a website that says KarlaMay, the number 4 Senate.com. They can also get me there.
Until next time, so long.
She's shown up bright like a knife, wearing tennis shorts made of stripes, hand in hand to the grass, and we got it.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.